What is going on, guys? We are here. We are live. This is the betting and DraftKings breakdown for UFC Louisville. Obviously, my setup is a little bit different this week for a couple reasons. For starters, it's a beautiful day, right? And I like being outside, enjoy the weather. Hashtag team smell the roses. But also, I've just really backed up this week, so I didn't have time to do the full video with the full editing and all that going on. So instead, you're getting a poolside breakdown off the cuff for UFC Louisville. So 14 fights this weekend. It's a lower level card, but there's still 100K to first place on DraftKings. Still a lot of betting spots of 14 fights. So definitely going to break it down. And as always, um, there's a lot more in-depth stuff you can check out at fightnumbers.com. So basically, yeah, Dick's Insider said, "Looks like you're on set, ready to record an OnlyFans video." Yeah, so if we get enough likes and shares, maybe I'll start stripping or something and jump in the pool. No, first fight of the night is. Oh, he said audio's muffled. It's probably my hand holding it. Is that better? Hopefully. Sorry, this is going to be really low budget editing stuff. So I know you guys are used to quality for me, but like I said, I'm backed up. So this is what you guys get. This is for this week's for the true diehards. You know, a small, lower level card with no quality editing, nothing. So this one's for you guys. Basically, okay, yeah. So it was my hand blocking that. Sorry about that. Ryan Dos Santos, she goes by now. She's fighting UFC newcomer Puja Tomar. She's a minus 300 favorite. Come back on Tomar is about plus 240 or so. And basically, I don't know if Tomar's going to have more than a cup of coffee at the UFC level. I mean, she definitely seems like she's got okay striking, okay power. You know, she'll blast some powerful leg kicks and she'll throw in combinations, but she gets pretty reckless. So I could see her getting hurt closing distance against some fighters. I also think she's got clear grappling issues. She's been submitted multiple times on the regional scene, and I think that's why this one is kind of tailor-made for Ryan Dos Santos, who's somebody that I'm not super high on to begin with, but I do think it's a solid matchup for her. She's a BJJ black belt. She has competed in grappling tournaments. She previously fought on Contender Series, and she fought Denise Gomes, who's also fighting on this card. We'll talk about her in a few minutes. But basically, I'm not super impressed with Dos Santos. I just think this fight's going to get to the ground at some point, more than likely, and she's going to have a pretty big grappling edge there. The one caveat to that is we have seen Dos Santos slow in fights. We also know her wrestling is not like super high level. So there is a world that, you know, maybe if Tomar's better than we think, this plays out like that Gomes fight where Dos Santos doesn't have a ton of grappling success. Maybe Tomar, outpaces her late. Um, because that's the one like the biggest thing, that the best asset that I'll say about Tomar is she seems to have really good cardio. You watch her fights and like even past the first and second round, she's still throwing and still throwing hard. Her cardio seems to be really on point. So that's the one advantage for her. So like it wouldn't be the upset of the century, but I do think the grappling advantage is going to be pretty big here. So the official pick is going to be Dos Santos by submission. But in terms of DraftKings, it's a 14 fight slate. I just think there's better fights to target up and down the card. Next fight is actually the Taylor Lapolis Cody Staman fight. I originally thought I made a mistake. For those that caught it, it was only up for about 10 minutes. I put out a tweet about Cody Staman moving up a weight class to 145. It's actually not. So this is scheduled for bantamweight. I was confused because if you go back and watch like the last Staman fight, which was a catch weight against DSDA, and you know that Staman has historically struggled to make 135. He's had some pretty rough cuts before. They talked about that fight that he planned to move up to featherweight. So I just sort of assumed that this was at featherweight, and I remembered that Lapolis had previously fought at 145. So I just assumed it was 145. I was wrong. It's scheduled for 135 pounds. So let's keep an eye on weigh-ins for that. I do think this is one where people are probably giving Lapolis more credit than he deserves, to be honest with you, just because Lapolis is a guy, and if you guys listen to me for a while, you know that I'm never backing these guys that fight on thin margins at chalk price tags because they just don't do enough to separate. So even though I think Lapolis is the better striker, huge reach advantage, 9-inch reach advantage, and he does have good takedown defense, good get-ups. He's tough to control. Those are all great things, but they're not exactly qualities that help you separate in fights. He doesn't have a ton of power. He's not going to look to grapple. It's just I could see him getting stuck along the fence. Like, this is going to be a competitive fight. I think people are hating on Cody Staman. You look at the level of competition that he's faced. Obviously, DSDA, he should have beat him. And some people maybe you make an argument that he did beat him. I thought rounds 1 and 2 were pretty close, and then obviously he hurt him in round 3. Clearly won the 3rd round, ended up losing. But prior to that, he fought Merab Dvalishvili. He fought who else did he fight? I'm drawing a blank, but he's fought some really tough competition, and he's basically been competitive with everybody that he faces. So it's like I don't see a world where Lapolis is like 30-27 blowout. So if you're going to tell me that he's close to minus 300 now, no shot I have any interest there in the betting market. I think all the value is on Staman. And the reason why I'm not like slam dunking a Cody Staman bet, which I might get around to, but if I do, it's going to be a small bet. And the reason being is because Staman, like going back to that DSDA fight, if he was just a little bit more aggressive, whether it was with the wrestling or the striking, like I could see him being super competitive here, but also not like super clear that he's winning the round. So I just think this is another really competitive decision. Dixon in the chat says Lapolis is allergic to scoring DraftKings points. Totally agree. I think this fight goes 15 minutes. I don't see a finish on either side, and I don't really see a ceiling on either side. Obviously, Staman, it's going to be easier to get there because of his price. So I'm going to have 0 Lapolis and some exposure to Staman, but overall, it's not a fight that I'm going to look to get overexposed to in terms of DraftKings. Sorry about that. Next fight up is going to be the Eduardo Mara Denise Gomes fight. So I talked about Gomes a little bit earlier. Basically, I kind of like the dog here in Gomes. I don't know if I'm going to get around to a bet or not, but I do think Mara is like the confidence in Mara this week is kind of mind-boggling to me. For somebody that like previously the Contender Series fought absolute tomato cans. She seems to be a pretty physical girl. She's obviously big for the division, but you got to remember she's only been fighting professionally for 2 years, and she's a one-dimensional grappler, and she's faced basically no resistance at any level. So we've seen it time and time again with some of these prospects. They get built up to this point. They have a nice flashy record, and they seem to have, some grappling chops or whatever. And then it's like the second that they face somebody that's not just going to roll over and be taken down and get dominated, they really start to get exposed. So like 0 shot, I'm laying chalk on her. And I think Denise Gomes, while she does have a tendency to give up takedowns, she defends around 50%, which is not good. I do think she's at least improving. And I also think she's got a clear striking advantage. All the power is going to be on the Gomes side. You talk about, like, everyone's talking about Mara's grappling because obviously that's what she's looking to do. Look at her striking, man. Her striking is dog water. Like, she looks like she's like almost in slow motion when she's like throwing her strikes on the feet. It's terrible, guys. Like, it's not good. If she doesn't get the takedowns, this is an absolute blowout in favor of Denise Gomes. And even on the feet, like that last fight against, even on the mat, that last fight against Montserrat Ruiz, she shoots a sloppy takedown, super telegraphed, and just flops to her back. Now, she was able to sweep and basically live in mount against Montserrat Ruiz. I don't know if that's going to be there against Denise Gomes. And I also think, like, look at the ground and pound. She's so big, she's so physical. Look at the ground and pound against Ruiz. Like, look at what stopped the fight. It wasn't because it was super damaging and super powerful. It was just because Ruiz just had 0 resistance. Like, it was very, I don't know. I just feel like people are overvaluing the grappling chops and the physicality here. And I think Gomes has proven, multiple times she's coming through as a big underdog. she's proven that she has the hardware to where you can never really counter out. And I think there's a real possibility that if Mora doesn't have that instant grappling success, or if the fight does get extended, look at some of the old Gomes fights on the regional scene. She fought some jobber grappler. I can't remember if it was LFA or the regional scene, but she basically got held against the fence for a couple rounds and didn't get finished, didn't get submitted. And then round 3 starts taking overs. And then the takedowns doesn't come as easily for the grappler. And Gomes just absolutely dominates her and ends up getting the finish. Like, I could see that happening here against Mora. So I think it's clear dog or pass. I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up betting Gomes. I'm certainly going to have some exposure to both sides on DraftKings, but I do prefer the dog in Gomes when you factor in the price. All right, next fight up, and I'm trying not to view any notes because I think it cuts out my camera, but I can't remember the next fight. If someone has it, put it in the chat. That way I don't have to change screens here. But next fight, 4 fights in is it the... I don't know. I'm going to have to check. Give me a sec. Andrea Lee. Thank you. Andrea Lee fight against... oh, my God. I'm drawing a blank. She's a minus 140 favorite. Montana Delarosa on the comeback, or about plus 120 currently. I think Andrea Lee is somebody that I've always given more respect than the market. I bet her quite a few times. Better actually like 4 different times. Including her last fight against Miranda Maverick, where I honestly still think that fight was super winnable for her. She just looked like, she looked super flat. Like, her striking was not at the level that it was prior. She did have some wrestling and grappling success, which I talked about in my breakdown for that fight, where I feel like people always kind of underrate Andrea Lee's wrestling and grappling. And I think that's not going to be the path for her here, but I also think it's relevant because Montana Delarosa, that's basically all she's going to bring to the table. She's going to look to take her down. She's going to look to grapple her. These two actually fought back in like 2019. I think it was the South Korea card. Andrea Lee won basically every round. Montana landed 5 takedowns, I believe, but didn't do anything with them. Didn't control her. Didn't even come close to submitting her. And I could kind of see it, playing out similarly. Lee's going to have a big striking advantage. She's clearly the better striker. And I don't think the grappling is going to be bad for her, to be honest with you. I think she's had a long history of being able to reverse and sweep fighters once they take her down. She's also live to land takedowns of her own. And you got to give her some credit here, because I know the main narrative is like, Andrea Lee looks cooked. Andrea Lee's washed, blah, blah, blah. And while that might be true, you also got to factor in the level of competition. Like, she's faced some really, really good fighters during that span. Natalia Silva, somebody that I think is gonna be a future champ in the division. And I just think, like, also that last fight against Maverick, she was sick for that fight. She had a sinus infection. You go back and you watch the Instagram video, she talked about that, how she was super flat that night because she was sick. And you watch that fight compared to her previous fights, particularly in the striking, and it seems pretty obvious to me that something was off that night. So, like, I don't want to put all this stock into the narrative that, like, oh, she's washed now, especially when she's clearly a better striker. Montana Delarosa, despite the improvements, she's still a complete punching bag on the feet, and she's never really had the volume either. So I think this is one where people are going to chase the dog, but I actually think there's probably some value on a buy low spot on Andrea Lee here. Not my favorite fight to target on DraftKings, just because I think maybe she gets taken down multiple times. I think this goes the full 15 minutes at a super high clip. I think it's super, chalky, but if you parlay a couple of them together, there's some fights on here that I feel are like 100% to go the full 15 minutes. Cody Staman fight that I talked about before is one of them, and the Andrea Lee fight here. I would be flat out shocked if either of them end in a finish. I think it's like either of them are like minus 300-ish to go the distance. Parlay them together, it's not that bad. Shout out to my dog Tucker in the background here. I actually have one of the reasons I couldn't do the full YouTube and editing and all that stuff is because I got a vet appointment. So my daughter has an eye appointment today, and then I have a vet appointment because Tucker, I don't know if he got into something yesterday, but he came inside and he just kept like shaking his head nonstop. And I was like checking him for ticks because we live, we got a lot of land. We're surrounded by woods here. I was checking for ticks, didn't see anything. And he just kept shaking his head for like 30 minutes. I'm like, what is going on? And so I put some ear cleaner in there, cleared him up a little bit, and he seemed like he was doing better. And then I realized his ears were all puffy and swollen. So I'm not sure what's going on. I know sometimes that happens if dogs shake too much or from allergies, which he does have allergies with pollen and everything. But because his ears are still a little bit swollen today still, I had to make a no notice vet appointment. So I got to check him for to make sure there's no hematoma or anything like that going on, anything too serious. But yeah, shout out to Tucker, certified good boy. Yeah, dude, he has serious pollen allergies, and the pollen was bad this year. He's always had it, so I get him a shot called Cytopoint, which is supposed to like basically not make him itch from it, and it actually does work. You just have to do it like every 2 months, which I do. But this season, for whatever reason, the pollen was so bad that it was just like, I mean, it was brutal for him. And somebody else, Danny, says baby Benadryl in his snacks. Benadryl is actually not good for dogs. I have done it before, but it's actually harsh on their organs. A lot harsher than it is to humans. So while it does have some benefits there for allergies, you really shouldn't do it unless you're in a pinch. They actually make dog version of Benadryl that's called Aliquil or something like that, and that's what I give them for allergies. But yeah, shout out to Tucker. He's always getting into trouble. 8 years old. He just turned last month, by the way. Still in really good shape though. All right, so let's keep it moving. I talked about the Andrea Lee fight. Andrea Lee by decision is going to be the official pick there. Yeah, appreciate you putting some of the fights in the chat. That way I don't have to go back and forth. I'll just scroll up and view those. I don't know if it's the right order, but okay. Marcos Castaneda fight. Jon Castaneda is currently. Oh my God, hang on. I got to address this. Joshua Frick in the chat says, always thought Jon was a cat guy. I mean, where did you get this, buddy? Like, served in the military, proud American. You think I'm a cat guy? Come on, dude. Dogs are a man's best friend. Now, I will say I do technically own a cat, and this is going to make me sound like a horrible person. He doesn't actually live with me. He's with my mother-in-law. I do actually have a cat, though. But I'm definitely a dog guy. The only reason I ever got a cat was because my wife is she is a cat lover. So we have a cat. It's just at my mother-in-law's house. Yeah, shout out to Brody. Shout out to Brody in the chat. All right, so let's get back on track. Daniel Marcos Castaneda. I like Castaneda here, and I'll give you guys a little sneak preview into fight numbers behind the paywall. Pepe's big on Jon Castaneda. He got him at a good number, some plus money, multiple unit bet on Jon Castaneda. I'm probably going to end up tailing that. I did like Castaneda as well pre-tape, and then after tape as well. I still like Castaneda. I've never been a huge Marcos guy. Not that I don't think he's not great, but I also just kind of think he's kind of like the definition of mid to me. Like he's a solid striker, solid volume, calf kicks, jab. Don't really think he has a ton of power, super one-dimensional. So it's like, you guys know the theme with me. If these guys are one-dimensional and they're not not super aggressive with finishing and just kind of more of a thin margins guy, I'm kind of out on them, to be honest with you. And Jon Castaneda has proven that he's capable at fighting at this level. He's fought really good competition and come through in most of those spots. So I like Castaneda. I think he's more well-rounded. I think he's got more ways to win this fight. Better overall grappler. I don't think he's going to look to grapple here, but if either guy's going to have grappling success, I think it's Castaneda. But I actually like Castaneda on the feet here as well. Even though he's been knocked out multiple times, I still think for the most part he's pretty tough to get out of there, and I don't see Marcos getting a finish. And if that's the case, I like the sexy Mexi side. We'll say Castaneda by decision is the official pick. All right. Yes, stream is always brought to you by fightnumbers.com. I'm always going to plug that, guys. It's just because I believe in what I'm building there with the guys, Ozzy, Pepe, Evan, and Chad. But it's really just basically my life's work I put into fightnumbers.com. It's not all stuff that you have to pay for. It's a bunch of free stuff as well. One thing that is still not being used enough that is 100% free is the Fight Prop Finder. So if you go to the website and you don't have to have a login, you just go under the tools drop down. It's called Fight Prop Finder. You can search any fighter on the upcoming card and you can pull up their method of victory props. It pulls it up for you. Basically just a really quick and easy way to price shop around the market, helping you guys get the best price. Because obviously if you're getting the best of the number, you're going to make more money or lose less money in the long run. So that is a free tool that will always be free unless people just don't use it, because then it's like, all right, why am I giving it away for free? So definitely encourage you guys to use that and check out the rest of the stuff there as well. All right, next fight is scrolling up here in the chat. Yeah, I haven't gone live in a while. I used to do this a lot. I do like doing it. That way we get the chat interaction. So I was like, you know what? It's either I put out a really late full production video or I just do it kind of off the cuff here. So appreciate you guys joining on a Wednesday afternoon. Let's go to the Brad Katona, Jesse Butler fight. I mean, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one just because I think Brad Katona is just like, I mean, I talked about Marcos being the definition of mid. Brad Katona is like, if you're a mid fighter, what you can hope to become, because he's not special in any area, but he just is still hanging around. Like, this is his second stint in the UFC, and he's actually, like, he put on one or two exciting fights more lately, but he's still pretty mid to me. Like, solid striker, solid grappling, never going to be aggressive with the grappling, more of like a hold you up against the fence kind of guy, and doesn't really have the power to hurt you. Like, across the course of his long professional career, I think he only has 3 finishes, 3 or 4. Most of them are like late submissions. So like maybe you chase like a cheeky sub 2-3 combo on FanDuel at really big odds, something like that. That probably doesn't hit, but something that we could all throw pizza money on and root for. I'm not opposed to that. I don't think Butler's very good at all. Made his UFC debut on short notice. They needed a warm body. They gave him to Jim Miller, and it was like Miller just instantly, duck, counter, back to back, just absolute lights out this guy. I think he's a regional jobber. And I think a guy like Katona, who is experienced at the UFC level multiple times, and of course on the Ultimate Fighter as well, like Katona has seen this guy twice over. Like Butler's not going to be bringing anything that Katona's never seen before. It's just a question of whether or not Katona can get him out of there. He probably could, but he probably doesn't. So we'll say Katona by decision. Interesting note on DraftKings, he's 9,600. I responded to my guy Gordo Gambles on Twitter, who's like, what sticks out to you in pricing this week? And I said, Brad Katona could fight twice and still not pay off his salary. Obviously being a little bit, a little bit trolly there, but I do think I'm going to have no interest on Brad Katona. It's an easy fade. 9,600 historically is hard enough to find the optimal lineup, but especially when you're like really a decision type of fighter. And even if he gets a finish, I'm not sure it's going to be enough to be optimal. So Katona by decision is the official pick. No interest on DraftKings though. All right, let's see. What do we got next? We got the Carlos Prates, Charles Radtke, Chuck Buffalo fight. This is one where it's kind of funny because I've never really been a big Prates guy. I tried to fade him on Contender Series. Didn't work with my guy Mitch Ramirez, who I think we can agree now is kind of a bum, which is sad because I'm still rooting for my guy Mitch. But yeah, won by knockout on Contender Series, fought Trevin Giles, who I faded him again and was looking great. Giles won the first round, I believe, on all three judges' scorecards, and I think was winning the second too, and then just gets absolutely starched and knocked out. But that's the type of style that Prates is always going to bring. He's very long and rangy, comes from a high-level kickboxing background, and I believe he's a black belt as well in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But he has been taken down and controlled at times, so I don't know if his grappling is all that great. It just probably doesn't matter here, to be honest with you. I think Radtke is never really pursuing the grappling all that much, and in terms of the striking, Radtke has some power himself, but he's very hittable. He's extremely hittable. He's going to be at a huge reach disadvantage in this fight. So, like, I know some people are going to chase the Radtke value or perceived value because he's come through multiple times as an underdog. But I think, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I do want to fade Prates long term, but I think this is a knockout victory for Prates here. I think it's only a matter of time before he catches Radtke and probably knocks him out here. Hopefully it's in highlight reel fashion, and then we just get a better fade spot in the future on Prates. But it's going to be Prates by knockout for me. That's the official pick. It's an okay fight to target on DraftKings, but not my favorite. There's some better ones coming up here that I'm sure we'll get into. But in terms of this one, I'll have some exposure to both sides, but I'm definitely not planting my flag either way. Next fight up, we have I don't think it's a okay. Yeah, we got Moises fight and then Baeza fight, and then it's the main card, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the Moises Klein fight. Klein, last time I checked, was a minus 120 favorite. Comeback on Moises was plus 100. I lean with the Klein side. Not sure if I'm confident enough to bet. That's one that I got to think about a little bit more and dig a little bit deeper. But I do like the Klein side. I've always kind of liked Klein. There's really only been one fight where he hasn't really shown up, in my opinion, and that was the Nate Landwehr fight. But I think Moises is just one of those guys where he has to have his style of fight to look good, and when he doesn't, he looks really bad. And we've seen that against multiple different fighters. The most recent one, I think, was the Benoit Saint Denis, where he got absolutely really just steamrolled throughout that fight. I think on the feet here, it's a clear advantage to Klein, who's got big power. He rips the body well. We know he has that big, powerful head kick. He's got legitimate knockout power, and he's not a terrible grappler either. He's capable of landing takedowns. He's not dead in the grappling. So if this was one where it was like, once they hit the mat, I was like really in fear that he was going to get submitted, then okay, maybe I lean with the Moises side, but I don't think that's the case here. I think Klein's grappling is good enough to compete there when the fight gets there, and I think on the feet, this is a big advantage for him. All the power is on the Klein side, and I think he's going to throw more volume as well, and I just love the way he works the body in combinations, especially against that last dude, AJ Cunningham, where he got the finish there. Like, if he's doing that to Moises, we've seen Moises kind of crumple in adversity in the past, and I think that could be what this one looks like. So I like the Klein side. We're going to say Klein by TKO. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our featured bout on the prelims. We have Miguel Baeza against Punahil Soriano. Baeza was, last time I checked, pushing like minus 200 or like minus 196, and the comeback on Soriano was like plus 150, plus 160 area. And I don't know, man. I talked about like the too much faith in Mara earlier. I think this is too much faith in Baeza, and I say that as a guy who is a big Carmel Thunder fan. You know, I've cashed on Baeza in the past. I remember hitting a submission against, I think It was plus 550. I think it was against Takashi Sato, maybe one of those. But Baeza's a guy, black belt, BJJ, doesn't really pursue the grappling, so that's why the submission prop was priced like that. He doesn't have a ton of submission victories, doesn't really look to grapple all that much, even though he's a capable grappler. And I think if he chooses to grapple here, that would be a clear advantage for him against Soriano, but I don't trust him to do that. And you know what else I don't trust? The guy's chin, because it's absolute dust at this stage in his career. He's been knocked out multiple times in back-to-back fights. And Soriano, you know, people are going to talk a lot of smack about him this week, and it rightfully so. Like, the dude has looked, you know, super fraudulent at times, particularly when you force him to grapple. You know, he's never had a good gas tank, but when these guys are grappling him, that's when he's gassing out super quick. I don't know if I think Baeza is going to come out with that game plan, even though I think he should. And if he doesn't, I don't trust the chin at all. And we know Soriano has big, big power. Even in that last fight, which people are going to reference like, oh, you got ragdolled by Stoltzfus and submitted, like, this guy's a bum, blah, blah, blah. Go back and watch the fight. He tagged Stoltzfus multiple times, hurt Stoltzfus in the first round and in the second round. And it's because, like, a guy like that with a big left hand, he's always going to have that type of power. And Stoltzfus is durable, man. Stoltzfus is tough. I think if Baeza gets cracked with some of those shots, he's not hanging out there, guys. Like, he's going to sleep. So, and then you factor that in with the 2-year layoff on Baeza's side, and people are betting him at a chalk price tag. No, thank you. No, thank you at all. I got Soriano here. Soriano by knockout. Love this fight for DraftKings. I think both guys have the upside, but give me Soriano by KO. All right, moving on to the main card. We got Julian Marquez against Zach Reese. Now, this is another fun one. I mentioned some of the previous fights for DraftKings purposes weren't the greatest. This is one I love for DraftKings. I think maybe you could even lock this fight if you want to get real aggressive, because I think regardless of who wins, it's coming by an early finish. Like, Zach Reese is literally a meme fighter, and I think Marquez is just a better version of Reese, to be honest with you. Like, he's a super meme fighter as well. All of his wins have come inside the distance. Not a good round winner. But he's very dangerous on the feet, very powerful, and he's got sneaky submission upside as well. He's a decent submission grappler in terms of finding a finish. And Zach Reese is kind of the same thing. He's just done it against lower level guys. Like, Reese has some tools on the feet. He's big, he's long, he's got powerful leg kicks. And when guys try to grapple him, he can snatch up your neck. So I think either of these guys have finishing upside. I think Marquez is clearly more proven at the UFC level. So I definitely lean on the Marquez side. But in terms of DraftKings, I'm just basically pushing all my chips in here and hoping that somebody gets finished. And I think somebody will. We're going Marquez by TKO. That's the official pick. All right, moving right along here. I'm at about 12% battery on my phone. So 4 fights left. We got Bruno Ferreira, Dustin Stoltzfus, who we talked about earlier. This is one where I'm not that tempted on the Stoltzfus side of things. I know you can make an argument like, well, maybe he extends this fight and maybe, you know, takes over in the grappling. That's definitely possible. But I also think Ferreira just probably hurts him and finishes him at a pretty high clip here. Ferreira, super powerful guy. Most of his wins have come by knockout. Most of them have come by first round knockout as well. And Stoltzfus is super hittable on the feet. The only upside I see for Stoltzfus is, like I said, if he's able to take those shots like he did in the Soriano fight and extend the fight and really just kind of hope that Ferreira gasses, because we really don't know if Ferreira's going to gas because he rarely gets extended. He probably will, just because of the type of style of fighter that he is, but it's no guarantee. So I like Ferreira. I think Ferreira probably hurts Stoltzfus here and gets him out of here at a decent clip. I'm not going to fully fade the Stoltzfus side just because he is much cheaper and there is a path to victory. So it's going to be another one where I do like targeting it for DraftKings. I'll have exposure to both sides, but the official pick is going to be Ferreira by first round knockout. Dixon says, argument, let's say Reese. Okay, so last fight survives round 1. Do you think Marquez can do enough to be optimal in a second or maybe even third round finish? I do, yeah. Second, obviously more possible than the third, especially because I think if this goes to a third, it probably just gets really sloppy and the finish is even less likely. But I think second round being optimal is still very in play. Both of these guys are priced in the mid range. And if this goes 2 rounds, these guys are both memes. Like we could see a couple knockdowns, a reversal, something like that. Like there's ways for these guys to rack up points. So I think second round for sure, still in play to be optimal. All right. So next fight up, we have, let's see. We have Raul Rosas versus Ricky Turcios. Turcios is like a minus 235 favorite. The comeback on, Raul Rosas Jr. is a minus 235 favorite. Comeback on Turcios is like plus 195. This fight was booked and they were supposed to fight back at UFC Mexico. This was one where it got scratched after lock. I was super heavy on the Rosas Jr. side. Obviously took a 0 there, so not fun because it was scratched after lock due to an illness on the Rosas Jr. side. So now they rebooked it. My opinion hasn't changed. There's clearly some downside to a guy like Rosas Jr. We've seen that in his fights in the past, where if he's unable to get the grappling success easily, and you make him work, and you extend him into later fights, then yes, he tends to gas out. But it's usually because he's pushing a crazy pace for about 10 minutes before you really start to see him slow down. And I think against Ricky Turcios, who we know is going to give up takedowns. Yes, he's a good scrambler, but I think it's very likely here that Rosas Jr. takes him down very early and gets to really dominant positions, particularly the back, which is where he's very good at controlling people. And I think it's more than likely that he ends up finding the submission here. So I like the Rosas Jr. side. Obviously, there's a world where Turcios can extend him and maybe try to take over late, but I don't see it unless you're giving me like a big number on like a Turcios round 3 KO or something. Maybe that would be the way to hedge it. But I think Rosas Jr. by sub, and I think he's a solid target on DraftKings as well. What's up, Sniper? Appreciate you joining on a Wednesday afternoon. Dixon said feeling Rosas decision, but now I'm feeling Rosas rolls. Yeah, I think it's Rosas submission. I just think Turcios is super likely to put himself in bad spots here. Next fight up, appreciate you, is Dustin Jacobe, Dominic Reyes. This kind of is similar to the Katona Butler matchup for me, not because Reyes is super low level, but Reyes has 0 durability. So the reason I bring up that fight is because I said it basically comes down to whether or not you think Katona can get him out of there. I think this one comes down to whether or not you think Jacobe has the power to get him out of there. And I kind of do, to be honest with you. Like Jacobe, former glory kickboxer, known as more of a point fighter, mostly with the leg kicks. I get all that. But he also has shown flashes of power at the UFC level as well. He has a knockout or two at the UFC level. He has, a big right hand, even though he doesn't throw it that often. And again, I'm never looking to back these guys that have no durability. And I think Dominic Reyes is past the point of no durability. So I think it's Jacobe by knockout. That's the official pick. Which brings us to the main card, guys. Trying to do it before my phone dies. So if I crash out here, it's because my phone died. It's not because I died. It just means I have no battery. But appreciate you all joining to talk about this UFC Louisville card. I know it's a lower level card, but there's still 14 fights. I'd much rather that than have no fights at all. I'm sure you guys are with me if you're joining this low quality stream on UFC Louisville on a Wednesday afternoon. So appreciate you guys as always. Main event is going to be Nasruddin Imavov against Jared Cannonier. Imavov's currently a slight favorite, almost a pick 'em on some books last time I checked. I like the Imavov side, and I've I've been kind of hit or miss on Cannonier in terms of some of my breakdowns. I seem to always want to count these guys out once they get past a certain age, and he's proven that age is just a number, baby, because he has like honestly looked really good over his last like 4 or 5 fights. Even he's very powerful, good striking. He's one dimensional though, and at times, the volume is there, but at times it hasn't been there as well. And I think Nasruddin Imavov, somebody that I consider to be one of the best prospects in the division, I think it's just his time. And now, 1 year older, Cannonier 40 years old, so the wrong side of 40. Cannonier or Imavov just way younger. I think all the upsides on the Imavov side. I think he's more well-rounded when you factor in, maybe he's able to grapple him a little bit, hold him up against the cage, like that type of stuff. It's not scoring a ton, but in really close fights. And I do think the striking is competitive here. I think he's just going to be doing enough, mixing in the martial arts. And I really do think the age thing is a real advantage for him. So I like Imavov. I'm probably going to bet Imavov. If the 40-year-old Cannonier proves me wrong again, it wouldn't be the first time. But that's going to be my pick. Is going to be Imavov by decision. I do think it goes the full 25 minutes. And what kind of run have we been on? I think it was Chad in the Fight Numbers Discord brought it up. Like every middleweight main event just goes 25 minutes automatically, or every middleweight fight it seems like is going, but particularly the main events, and that's been like spot on. Like every single one is going 25 minutes, it feels like, and I think this one does too. So I like Imavov. I like Imavov by decision. Before I get out of here, guys, check out fightnumbers.com. I'm going to plug it again. I'll put it in the comments once I get out of here, just so you guys have a quick link. But yeah, a bunch of free tools on there. And then obviously for people that take this a little bit more seriously, we have tools behind the paywall. And I feel it's very affordable. Betting package is $49.99 a month. You get everybody's picks, Evan, Ozzy, Pepe. But for the people that don't, like, the picks are there for people that don't want to really put in the work, but have sharper people, provide them picks. That's all great. Just tell them, you'll make money. But what I get more excited about personally is just being able to offer the tools to help you guys that are taking this seriously and putting in the work yourselves, offering tools to make your life a little bit easier. We do that with the odds screen. Makes line shopping way easier, and it's way cleaner and more organized than some of the free alternatives on the market. It also updates in real time during the events for live betting to make live betting a lot easier on you guys. And then we continuously are adding stuff to it as well. We have the totals on there. We have alternate totals. We have GTD markets, and there's going to be more stuff that we add as well. There's also something that's been in the works for a couple months, and I'm not going to say what it is because people try to steal some of my ideas, but it's something that does not exist on the market right now. It is for bettors, and it is very, very cool. And that's about all I will say, but you guys are going to absolutely love it. And for those that are already a subscriber over there, that's just an added bonus that they didn't even know was coming. Like, that's what I'm continuously working on, is ways to make the product better, to make your life easier and mine, because stuff that I'm interested in, I have a feeling you guys are going to like it as well. So check out fightnumbers.com. Appreciate the love. Best of luck this week, guys. We'll catch you next time.